So as I'm recording this, it's Friday, October 31st. This will be out by November 1st. It appears that something is about to pop off in Venezuela. We're not exactly sure what's going on or why. I'm going to try to give you as much as I can to help you understand what's happening and why, but I'm afraid I'm going to raise more questions than provide answers. But here's what we know. Okay, so breaking U.S. airstrike on Venezuela's appears imminent. It does appear imminent from all the news that I've seen. It looks like something's getting ready to happen. We're not exactly sure what. I mean, something could have already happened behind the scenes that we're just not being, hearing reporting on. Trump was being asked about that today. There are reports that you are considering air strikes within Venezuela. Is that true? No, it's not true, he says. But okay, it's not just because it's Trump, but like if you were about to invade another country and you needed the element of surprise, would you say, sure, it's true? I mean, you wouldn't do that. So we just don't know what's happening. He's denying it, but if you asked him in the hours just before something went off with Iran and Israel, we probably would have gotten the same kind of answer. Okay. Tucker is trying to save one of Putin's most important allies. So Tucker Carlson says, does fentanyl come from Venezuela? No, most drugs wind up in this country do not come from Venezuela. Well, he's not wrong. Like, I'm not a big fan of Tucker Carlson, but he's not wrong about this. They're not produced there. They're not trafficked through there. And the cartels distribute them and kill people in our country are not Venezuelan. Okay, so let's just fact check this as pretty simply. And I looked for like legitimate studies and I couldn't find hardly any, but just using some AI. Colombia came to my mind first. So here's Colombia, largest source of cultivation in the Andes region. Recent reports show sharp increase in potential cocaine production. Peru, second largest coca producer after Colombia. Bolivia, third major coca production country in the Andes region. Then you had Mexico, and Mexico. So they're 1, 2, 3, and 4. Venezuela's seventh down the list. So why are we potentially going after Venezuela? Because it looks like something is about to pop off. Well, I don't know the answer. Preston Stewart just had a really good interview. I watched this interview with two people that have a good sense of what's going on. America's next war is being prepared with military assets lined up to take on the cartels in Venezuela. So go and watch that video. In fact, I'll see if I can link that below so that you can watch it because you really want to stay informed. These guys are pretty sharp and very plugged into what's going on with Venezuela. Gary Kasparov is a little jaded about this. Here's the quote that he's reacting to. The U.S. will attack Venezuela within hours or days, and that's according to the Miami Herald. And Gary Kasparov says, as expected, when domestic opposition isn't scary enough, foreign adventures are mandatory for every would-be autocrat. That said, Maduro is an illegitimate thug, an enemy of Venezuelans, the U.S. and the free world, an ally of Russia and Iran. All should be done to speed up his ouster. But so he's saying, like, this is Trump trying to maybe wag the dog a little bit, like, try to, focus on something else. But he is conceding that Maduro's a thug and an enemy of Venezuelans and an ally of Russia and Iran. And I'm going to connect those in just a moment as well. So maybe it's that, maybe it's something else. Maybe they just, it's got the largest oil reserves in the world, larger than Saudi Arabia, which is, I mean, that's pretty amazing. Like if you look at a chart, U.S. is way down the list from Venezuela and Saudi Arabia and Iran and even Canada. So maybe it's because of oil. I just don't know, but that's potentially part of the picture. Now, as a military action against Venezuela looms, U.S. just closed a swath of airspace off the coast of Puerto Rico, designating it national defense airspace. If you're European and you're watching this, and I know most of my audience is, 2/3 of my audience are international, not American. Puerto Rico is a territory of the United States. It's not a state, but it is a federal territory of the U.S. and closed the airspace off the coast of Puerto Rico, designating it national defense airspace. This closure is adjacent to significant deployment of forces, so it looks like something's getting close. And then here's significant GPS interference and jamming, previously not seen before, has been observed since October 29th over coastal areas of northern Venezuela alongside Trinidad and Tobago. So we see this happening. And when you just see so many things lining up one after another, it seems like something's quite possibly going to happen. Here's the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Russia. Why are we looking at Russia? Because they're saying this. Maria Zakharova saying, we support the leadership of Venezuela in defending its national sovereignty, taking into account the dynamics of international and regional situation. We stand ready to respond appropriately to the request of our partners in light of emerging threats. Those emerging threats are the United States. If you're scratching your head and wondering why, join the rest of us. We're wondering why. By the way, if you think that you understand why this is happening, put that in the comments below. Share that with us. Let us kick it around and see what makes sense. We'd appreciate that. Okay. By the way, if you don't know who I am, I'm just a professor that's trying to provide context, mostly in the war in Ukraine, but this is an emerging thing that we have to pay some attention to as well. So if you want updates on the war in Ukraine and big events like this in the news, consider subscribing. Okay, back to where we were. They plotted to kidnap Masih al-Najad from Brooklyn and fly her to Caracas, not Tehran. Caracas. Okay, again, it's all connected. This is Masih. She is a leader of the opposition against the Iranian regime, like pro-feminist. You got to take off your hijab and, be liberated. Like, that's her whole thing, right? In Iran, that could get your head cut off, right? I mean, that's a very dangerous thing to do. She came to the United States and they tried to assassinate her. Now, they plotted to kidnap her and fly her to Caracas. That's Venezuela. Not to Tehran, but to Caracas, because Venezuela was a safe house for Tehran's agents. So Russia is connected to Venezuela. Iran is connected to Venezuela. And it gets even crazier than that. I'll show you in a moment. Venezuela was a safe house. In 2022, a man waited outside her house with an AK-47. In 2025, 2 men tied to Iran were convicted in New York for trying to kill her. This is transnational repression, dictatorships outsourcing their tea. The border is gone, but the threat isn't. By the way, when I say their tea, I just try not to pronounce that for YouTube, just because, well, YouTube censors and that sort of thing. So they wanted to see me on my porch in Brooklyn home, covered in blood. I wore red instead to face my would-be assassin and celebrate life, justice, and freedom, she says. Okay, but again, they were going to bring her to Caracas, Venezuela. Okay, and then it gets even crazier. Who had Hezbollah in Venezuela on their bingo card for this week? Because look at this, October 22nd, this was just a week ago, 2025. It's pretty crazy. GOP senator predicts Trump's next move in Venezuela amid Hezbollah's, that's the party of God from Lebanon that fights with Israel, Hezbollah's influence long past due. Like, let me show you this before we move anywhere else. Okay. Hezbollah's growing foothold in Latin America, found its epicenter in Venezuela, where U.S. lawmakers and former counter-T officials say that the Maduro regime has turned the country into a safe haven for one of the world's most dangerous T groups, giving it access to drug trafficking routes, forged documents, and gateway to the Western Hemisphere. So if a T group has access to drug trafficking routes and forged documents and the Western Hemisphere, that becomes potentially dangerous. So maybe that's what's going on here. I don't know that this is what's going on, but maybe there's something related to that. And by the way, if you're picking a fight, a war of some sorts with drug traffickers, they might hit back, and that could be problematic within the United States. We got to be aware of that. This just in, Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro just today asked Russia, China, and Iran for immediate military support. So now, who are all the players here? Venezuela plus Russia plus Iran plus China plus Hezbollah, the party of God from Lebanon. And wow, it's all adding up in a very, very weird way. Okay, now this is Venezuela GDP per capita, Venezuela and the United States. This is 1976 when they nationalized their oil, but look at this. From 1954 to 64, they had higher per capita GDP than the United States. This line here is the United States. This is Venezuela. They nationalized their oil, and then things kind of took a downward kind of turn. until we get to this. And then it all ticked back up. This was about 2002 when things changed. So what happened in 2002 to 2009? Because that's the period that we're seeing here where things are looking really rosy again. Well, that's because oil itself was ticking back up in a significant way. And so they were just riding the trend. But if you look at what happened after that, that's 2002 to 2008, 9, and then it just kind of stabilized, and then it went way down, and that's where they are now at about 5,000 as opposed to 15,000. Like this is just GDP per capita, 1998 to 2022, 15,000 in about 1998, and now it's at 5,000 per capita GDP. I mean, it's bad. Right now, all that to say, I don't know why we're doing this, why we're picking this fight with Venezuela, why we're starting a war when Trump is supposed to be we're not starting any new wars guy, wants to end all wars and that sort of thing. I don't quite understand, except I know he just really doesn't like Maduro. And again, Maduro's not a great guy. He is a bad guy. There's a $50 million reward from the U.S. government for Nicolas Maduro. But again, if you're really looking to clamp down on drugs, Colombia seems to be the place to look, and then maybe a few other countries before that. All right, I'm not sure that I answered any questions, but I did try to give you a full understanding as I understand it about what's going on in Venezuela. Please put your comments below. I try to read as many as I can. Subscribe if you want to hear more about this over time, because I think it's going to start requiring us to talk about it more and more. All right, that's all that I have. Thank you, my friends, for your time, the likes, the shares, and the subscribes, and for being the kind of person that cares about the world we live in.